Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to be talking about two very important elements or properties that can be used to justify and align flex items inside of a container. So we're going to be talking about two main properties. One of them is going to be responsible for the horizontal alignment and the other for the vertical alignment. So let's talk about them. The first one, which is for horizontal alignment, is called justifycontent. Now, both of these properties actually contain three main values, which are shared between the two of them, and then each of them contain two special values, which actually align them in a pretty different way than you would expect. So let's talk about justifycontent. Now, first of all, you'll notice that these are a little bit stretched out. Don't worry about that for now. That's just because of the added height to the container. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let's get started. So the first three properties that are pretty common are flex start, flex end, and center. So flex start is going to be where the container starts, which in this case is on the left. On the other hand, the end is going to be the opposite. So in this container, it's on the right, and then center positions it in the middle. So what I'm going to do here is just set it as center for now. And you can see that now all of our items have been centered in the middle here. If I set it to something like flex end, and remember it does contain a dash in there, it's going to move everything to the end of the container here. So those are the three main values. Let's talk about the two special ones now. Now, pretty much these ones are going to be messing a little bit with the spacing between these, but they are still related to alignment because it's changing the spacing in a way that does actually align our elements here. So the two main values are space around and space between. So let's talk about space between first. What happens is that the spacing between the flex items is created so that it's all equal and it creates equal divisions to move everything equally divided from each other on the same row. On the other hand, space around actually creates spacing on all sides of the item. So instead of just creating them between, it's going to create them between some of the flex items and the edges. So that's the main difference between the two, and it depends on what you really want. So for example, if you want a centered kind of item or a centered flex box, what you would do is use the space around property, whereas if you wanted something to be stretched out, you would use the space between property. So there we go. Those are some of the little items or values that you can use on your justifycontent property. Now let's move on to align items. So this is the property that aligns it vertically. Now by default it's set to stretch, which is what we can see here. So it just stretches all the way across down to the bottom of the container, but we can actually change this. So let's go ahead and add this property, align items. Now what we're going to do is change it to center. So just like before, we have three main values: flex start, flex end, and center. You can see that immediately now all of these items are still spaced in between, but they have been moved to the center here. So you can see here that on the align items, this has been arranged vertically. This is the start at the top, and the bottom, or the flex end, is at the bottom of the container. Justifycontent says that flex start is on the left side and the flex end is on the right. So there we go. You can see what this looks like right here is when we align the items, it centers it in between the top and the bottom. So let's go ahead and just see what the other values look like. So for example, flex start. So let's just say you want to keep the height of these items the same. You don't want to stretch them. This is what you would do. You could also set it to flex end if you wanted something to appear at the end of a page. And yeah, that's pretty much it for those three main values. Now let's talk about the two special values. So these are a little bit different because they don't follow some general convention, but the two values are baseline and stretch. Now we've already covered stretch a little bit in the beginning of this, in which we could set stretch as our default value, and all that does is just align it all the way through from top to bottom, but baseline is a little bit different. Now unfortunately we can't really see the effect apparent right here, but pretty much what happens is that all of these items, no matter their size, are aligned to a baseline. Now if I actually go and add some inline styles to override some of these, so for example B, I'm going to, let's just say I'm going to make the line height, which is a property we haven't actually learned, yet. What we're going to do is just set the align height to, whoops, a little problem there. I'm going to set this to 100 pixels, like that. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and refresh the page and see what happens. You can see that this is a little bit higher, but they're all aligned on the same line. You can see that the fonts here have been changed a little bit, it's not really apparent here, but you can see the heights are different, but they're still all in the same line. So that's what baseline actually does. It just, no matter the size or the font text or anything, it's all going to keep them, or it's going to keep them all on the same baseline, and that's what it does. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this inline style since we don't need it. And those are pretty much the two main alignment properties. Now, if you wanted to align something to the center of a flexbox, what you would do is just set justify content and align items, both of them to the center. And what that's going to do is just align everything to the center of the flexbox. So that's what I've just done here, is I set both of them to center. So that way, on the top, it's centered between the top and the bottom, as well as the left and the right. All right, let's move on.